I am Dracula.
Bela Lugosi. I remember him scaring the daylights out of me when I was a kid.
He got that stigma on him, a vampire. You know, it lived with him for the rest of his life.
There you will bring the coffin with my native soil.
Dracula equals Bela Lugosi equals Dracula.
Doesn't Dracula ever end for you? No, no. Dracula never ends.
He was the epitome of the suave, cultured European actor. His continental manners, dark good looks, and imposing presence made him an ideal candidate for the kind of romantic heroes he longed to play. But for millions of audiences around the world, Bela Lugosi would forever be associated with one role, that of the bloodthirsty Transylvanian aristocrat, Count Dracula. Ironically, it was in Transylvania on October 20th, 1882, in the quiet town of Lugos, Hungary, that Bela Ferenc Dejo Blasco was born. The youngest of 4 children born to Paula and Istvan Blasco, Bela showed little enthusiasm for school. He much preferred music and singing, interests that were not shared by his banker father, a strict disciplinarian who expected his son to follow in the footsteps of his older brothers and learn a conventional trade. But from an early age, Bela demonstrated a headstrong nature that rivaled that of his father, and the tension that grew between them was fierce and palpable.
He left home when he was 12 years old to go out and make his way in the world. My father at that time wanted to quit school and had an ambition to be an actor, and so he worked starting when he was very young and was independent. His parents thought that he should stay in school, and so apparently there was quite a rift between my father and his parents.
Bela had no further contact with his family until 1 year later, when he was stunned by news of his father's death. Frustrated in his efforts to find stage work, the teenager toiled in mines and worked as a machinist. But adversity only fueled the boy's theatrical ambitions.
He always wanted to be an actor, and he finally achieved it just by perseverance. I remember him saying that he hung around the stage door of the stages there in Hungary, and finally somebody gave him something to do on the stage.
Bela Blasco made his first recorded stage appearance at the age of 20 and was soon appearing regularly with regional theater companies in a variety of roles.
He told me on the stage in Hungary, he had played Hamlet, Macbeth, a lot of the wonderful classical roles. And I was very, very impressed, to the point of where I said, wow, you did those things, really? So that when you deal with the Bela Lugosi, you're dealing with what was a very good actor.
The early decades of the 20th century were a golden age for the Hungarian theater, due in no small part to the international reputation of the country's leading dramatist, Ferenc Molnár. His exquisitely crafted plays such as Lilian, The Devil, and The Guardsman offered tremendous opportunities to an actor of Bela's talent, looks, and burning ambition. It was this ambition that prompted him to adopt a series of stage names in an effort to secure as many roles and as many chances for fame as possible.
He performed under the name Aristide Olt and maybe other names. It was somewhere early in his career, though, that he adopted the name Lugosi after the town Lugos where he was born.
At the age of 28, Bela Lugosi was given one of his most important breaks. He was chosen to take over the male lead in a 1910 production of Romeo and Juliet. Lugosi's lusty interpretation of Shakespeare's star-crossed lover proved controversial and popular.
He was obviously a very gifted person. He had a very powerful presence on the stage and off the stage. And he was the type of person who went to the utmost lengths to perfect his craft and his trade. He used to tell me about how long and how hard he would work at each role that he would play. This was so ingrained in his life that he was really first and foremost an actor.
By 1913, Lugosi had achieved every Hungarian actor's dream, an invitation to join the National Theatre of Budapest, one of the country's leading state-subsidized companies. Though his work was limited to supporting roles, the National Theatre offered him the chance to work with the most distinguished actors and directors of his generation, a generation soon lost to what became known as the Great War.
In World War I, in Hungary, actors were exempt from military service. My father nevertheless believed in the cause that his country was fighting in, and he did join the army. So he was on the front lines in the ski patrol and was injured there and finished the war, I believe, in the hospital, never was back in active duty again. At that time, he was a captain and received the equivalent of the Purple Heart for his injuries.
At war's end, the 35-year-old veteran returned to the National Theatre, where he continued to dazzle audiences with an almost messianic stage presence.
In Hungary, they had a system where you would be ranked, actually. Each actor would perform the same part as the years would go by, and they'd judge one actor against another performing all the classic roles. My father, for example, played Jesus, and he actually looked like Jesus in that part, or at least how Jesus, is normally depicted. And he rose in the ranks and eventually was ranked #1.
It was at this same time that Lugosi married Ilona Smik, the daughter of a prominent Budapest attorney. But their union was troubled from the start by Bela's hair-triggered jealousy and the fact that Ilona's parents disapproved of her husband's unstable theatrical career. To make matters worse, post-war Hungary was rife with political struggle, and the theatrical community forged alliances with the revolutionary regime in the hope of improving working conditions. Lugosi, among the most visible of the organizers, was branded as a traitor when the revolution failed. Fleeing with his wife to Vienna, Ilona's parents forced her to return to Budapest and file for divorce. Bela was devastated.
This woman who was his first love was really somebody who he always felt very strongly about. A woman who I think he always loved all his life.
Shortly after starring in his very first film, The Leopard, in 1917, Bela moved to Berlin and found employment in the thriving German film industry, playing featured roles in such films as F.W. Murnau's Der Johanniskopf, an early adaptation of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and The Deerslayer. But despite the success, Bela grew increasingly dissatisfied with life in Germany. Unable to return to Hungary, he worked his way across the Atlantic as a ship's engineer. Landing in New Orleans in the summer of 1921, he found his way to New York City, where he managed to obtain political asylum.
My father was a very well-read, far-thinking person. He had some vision or idea of the greatness that America would become. He was really a very profound American inside. That's what he would tell me. He really believed in this country.
Now living the life of a European exile, Bela married Viennese-born actress Ilona von Montag. But the marriage soon collapsed over issues of jealousy and professional rivalry. Unfamiliar with the English language, Bela attempted to start a Hungarian repertory company. When he did find work in English-speaking theaters, he memorized his lines phonetically, one syllable at a time. The result was a deliberate and highly inflected vocal style that would become his trademark.
Hungarian is very unusual in that here it is in the middle of Europe, unaffected by the Romance languages, unaffected by any other languages, frankly, sounding unto itself. It's a very hard accent to lose. Lugosi could never get rid of it. He tried. He could sometimes almost get rid of it, but never quite, you know.
Still smolderingly attractive at the age of 40, Lugosi scored a hit as the romantic Apache opposite Estelle Winwood in The Red Poppy in 1922. When his onstage lovemaking proved so passionate as to actually bruise his leading lady's ribs, Press agents wasted no time in promoting Lugosi as a major new sex symbol.
There was a sexuality about my father's persona, and I think he realized it. And so he prided himself as being able to make the women swoon.
But despite this newly found notoriety, Lugosi's heavily accented speech typed him to play foreigners, and usually villainous ones. It was a devastating blow to an actor who had always prided himself on range and versatility. In 1923, Lugosi made his American screen debut in Fox Films' The Silent Command, playing a master spy who plans to blow up the Panama Canal. In The Midnight Girl, a goateed Lugosi appeared in the role of a lecherous theatrical impresario. In 1927, Bela Lugosi was offered the leading role in a hit British stage play that was headed to Broadway. Tired of playing villainous stereotypes and disappointed by the part's lack of dialogue, he rejected the invitation. But when Raymond Huntley, the actor who had originated the part in London, also turned it down, Lugosi was asked to reconsider. The decision he made would change his life forever. On October 5th, 1927, Bela Lugosi's performance in Dracula took Broadway by storm. At the age of 44 and with hundreds of stage and screen roles behind him, Bela Lugosi had become a star.
When he did Dracula in 1927 on Broadway, it was startling. It was very sensual and very sexual. It wasn't something that was common.
It's the attractiveness of evil that Lugosi brought to that role. Taking the continental romantic sex appeal of the Valentino type of actor that was very popular in the mid-20s, the slick back hair, the aquiline features, the almost hypnotic power over women. That combines with his thick Hungarian accent, making the character romantic. Nothing like it had been done before.
Flush with success, Bela was soon seen squiring dozens of wealthy and beautiful women. In 1929, he married Beatrice Woodruff Weeks, the millionaire heiress of San Francisco's Mark Hopkins Hotel. But Bela's third marriage was a complete disaster, lasting only 4 days. The enormous success of Dracula made a film version inevitable. Securing the rights to both the book and the stage play, Universal Pictures hoped to use Dracula to lure Lon Chaney, their once resident man of 1,000 faces, away from MGM. Chaney had been responsible for 2 of Universal's most successful fright films, The Hunchback of Notre Dame and The Phantom of the Opera. Unfortunately, within months of his triumph in The Unholy Three, the versatile actor was stricken with throat cancer and died in August 1930. But despite Chaney's death, Bela was still not among the actors under consideration for Dracula. Others mentioned included Chester Morris, Paul Muni, and the Austrian actor Conrad Veidt.
He told me about the other actors who were being considered, and he was really disappointed and surprised that he was not the first choice. After he had been successful on Broadway in the play Dracula.
You may go.
While lobbying for the role, Lugosi had moved to Hollywood, where he honed his on-screen skills as a contract player at the William Fox Company.
How do you like that, my little radish?
You'd better go with him if you want those guns.
You think he got mad at me because I take you?
He'll never forgive you.
Oh, the Cayon is my friend. We don't fight over women. If I get tired of you, I give you back to him. What do I care?
Appearing in numerous bit parts and occasional featured roles, he often played exotic sheiks, European heavies, or corrupt businessmen.
Wait a minute, Joe. I don't get wrapped with the gunplay. I won't tell. I know you should bump me off, but I'd rather stay alive. Keep my mouth